New World, an MMO. In 2021, there's actually another game coming out this month, a new MMO called Crowfall. So the idea that this is a genre that has gone the way of the dodo may be a little bit of a misconception. Certainly by the number of people trying to get into the game, I was stuck in a queue for well over 30 minutes. The prompt on screen told me 30-minute wait with 3,000 people in front of me. Actually, it was about an hour and a half wait for me on an EU server, but that was at peak time. Later on, things evened out and I actually got into the game pretty quick, so that was good, and no bugs or crashes to speak of in this particular launch. The servers have been up, although they've been in huge demand, which is just interesting as an MMO player and someone who's interested in that genre. There's a lot of talk these days about it not being particularly popular in the face of other live service models, but certainly there seems to be a lot of interest in New World. But how does the game feel to jump into? First impressions, that's what this is. I've gone from level 1 to level 10, so it really is early game stuff. First impressions are pretty good. I mean, it's nothing that is hugely revolutionary or anything like that, but the game feels very solid to play. The storyline, there's a nice intro cinematic and then a short prologue, which is very short actually, 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops, just introducing you to the controls and some of the combat. Actually, combat is one of the things I think that I'm most impressed by this game. MMO tab targeting and hotbars is still a thing, and they've been trying to do action combat for years and years in various MMOs, but I've always felt like it's never really particularly been successful. I'm thinking of things like WildStar or maybe The Elder Scrolls Online, which certainly does fulfill it up to a point, but you always feel like the action combat is a veneer on top of what is essentially this kind of rotations and timed abilities. And there are certainly timed abilities in this game, but the action, the dodginess and the need to time attacks with the enemies actually feels the best of this type of MMO combat, this approach that I've played so far. You really need to time those attacks. It feels responsive. So there's no lock-on that I've found so far. You have to actually face your enemy and pick your moment to attack. So that feels really good, actually, from the very start. Possibly the most impressive thing about the game. The next thing that did impress me, however, was the tone and atmosphere. I think it's a very unique setting, and that appeals to me from the very start. This kind of Age of Sail, piratey, Napoleonic. It's a real mix of genres because there's magic in there as well in this world, but definitely sort of maybe 17th, 18th century, later than kind of your classic medieval fantasy setting. So for me, someone who's looking for something different, I've played so many generic medieval fantasy MMOs at this stage. The setting is very appealing and they skirt the line graphically. It's a very pretty game to look at, but they don't go too realistic and they don't go too stylized. It's somewhere in the middle, which really appeals to me. Something that puts me off in games is if it's too cute and cartoony, but also if it's too grim, dark and real. This has a nice sort of middle ground between the two that I'm really appreciating. Another thing that really hooks me into a game early, which this game does relatively well, is character creation. There's not a lot of fine tuning in terms of the way your character looks, but what I really appreciate, so you have, say, 16 different, I'm picking numbers out of the air, which I shouldn't do, but there are a good number of faces of different types, and then different beard styles that you kind of plug in together. There's no sliders or anything like that. However, what I did appreciate was the range of faces. So I was able to create quite an ugly guy with a bulbous nose and wrinkles all over his face and receding hairline and a bushy beard. So he looks like a dogged pirate who's been at sea for years and years. That's something that some games kind of neglect, your ability to do that, because everyone looks, oh, so well, it's so refined and so lovely, and I look fantastic. I don't really want to play that. I want to play someone who's a salty sea dog, and I was able to create that character from the very start. So I appreciated that. A little bit more fine tuning though would have been great. But there are pros and cons to that as well. Sometimes you get lost in options. There were some scars that you could put on guys as well. But yeah, I kind of like that, and I like the way that it set up your character. So the opening cinematic shows the captain of a ship on the way to this mysterious island. I'll talk about the story in a moment. But basically exploring that trope of the mysterious, the Skull Island or Monkey Island, or one of these mystical places that they've heard legends of. You can make your fortune there, but it's terrible and dangerous as well. You're on your way there and you get wrecked as you approach, and it switches from that captain character to your guy in the lower decks, and he's just one of the guys on the ship, which I liked. And as soon as you do pitch up on the island, like I say, it's very beautiful, very atmospheric. I really appreciated the sound design in the game, the ambient sound in the background. So on the beaches you have the seagulls and the ocean waves, and some really lovely music, very reminiscent of, I don't know, Pirates of the Caribbean again, Monkey Island, that type of game. That kind of setting that I really do like when it's done well. It can be too cliched, and it's certainly not historically accurate or anything like that, but you do get the feeling of this kind of remote Caribbean pirate kingdom, essentially. So the plot is that there's this mysterious island where there's this kind of corruption that is going on and turning parts of the island into a dark, deadly biome, essentially. So it's not particularly imaginative in terms of the storyline. It's something that we've heard so many times, but seen so many times before. And for some reason, people who arrive on the island, they can't die either. They're kept alive forever in this, by whatever this energy is that is corrupting, also seems to be keeping people alive. So you can't leave either. I think you're stuck there. We're all stuck there and just living forever. And the story branches out. So we kind of, everyone's in it together to try and combat the corruption. But then this idea of factions comes in. You have to pick your factions, and this is the point at which I feel like the storyline is kind of doesn't really cohere, because these three factions, there are the scientific guys, there's the religious faith based guys, and then just the guys who want to beat people up, their warriors. And certainly at the point that I've got to so far, there seems to be very little reason for these factions other than it's human nature to end up in a place and divide it up and choose a side. I don't understand why there are these three factions fighting when the overarching enemy is this corruption. I think it's basically to do with the game. They want this PvP territory control going on, three faction territory fight, and we've got to come up with factions in order to do that. But in terms of actually how that gels into the story, certainly at level 10, I'm not sure why we're in these various factions, apart from the fact that it's human nature to just fight one another. But one of the characters even says, oh, we come together to fight the corruption, but we're actually, we need to pick a faction. Why? I mean, our faction is against the corruption. So it's tenuous in that respect. But in terms of story, that's not necessarily why I come to MMOs in the first place. It's kind of the feeling and the atmosphere of the game, and whether I'm able to create a character that I identify with. In terms of that, I've already talked about the way you could, the character creation allowed me to create this salty sea dog style character, and I also like the options that you get. You basically, whatever weapon you pick up, you start gaining skills, and they are interesting weapons. So for instance, spears, we don't see that very much in games. Muskets, you can use a rapier, so you can be a swashbuckler. I wanted to really use a musket, a flintlock rifle kind of thing, and I was able to do that. So that again, it's reinforcing the atmosphere and the world, which I really enjoyed, and giving me character options to create a character. I almost feel like my guy coming up with a story straight away, which is a good sign in any game, but in an MMO particularly, I feel like that's something that doesn't often happen. When I think about Crowfall, I didn't get that feeling when I played that in the alpha, but it was very early on. I shouldn't say that. I should actually try Crowfall still. But yeah, I was able to do that. There's a lot of emphasis early on in terms of trade skills, a lot more than the quest progression of the early game is a lot involved with trade skills, because basically the idea on the island, apart from all these factions fighting over territory, is that you're helping to build up these various settlements, and in order to do that, you need to get resources and help the people there. So I think the crafting is seems to be well, it's certainly foregrounded. After you, when you get further into the game, how important it is, I don't really know at this stage, but they definitely want you to know how to craft and how to gather. On that topic, I really enjoyed the gathering and the finding. Things have moved on since the days of this node crafting way of doing things in the olden days, in that, you know, you're chopping down trees and harvesting, foraging, but the trees actually disappear from the world. They fall down. There's a kind of a realism to them when you chop down a tree or remove a node from the game, or pick the leaves off a bush, that I really appreciated. I kind of like that, and the map where you can go and find resources. So I always enjoy the early part of MMOs where you do a little bit of crafting for yourself. I hope it remains viable as you go further into the game. You know, you can continue to craft things. So I was able to make a tunic for myself and find the resources for early on trying to make gunpowder, so I had some ammunition for my gun. So yeah, I'm enjoying all that. So first impressions are generally really good. I got to go in. I think I want to get up to level 20 now and do some PvP. I don't know how important the PvP is. I do know that this game, the design of this game, it wasn't so PvE centric at one time. It was more PvP, and they've kind of added these quests and the more PvE content. So I hope, I'm not a heavy PvP player. I hope there's stuff for me to do other than fight over territory. And I hope that the crafting remains viable, because I'm enjoying it so far. I'm enjoying the finding of the materials, making of stuff. The trade, the auction hall seems interesting so far. So you can put up things for sale that you've crafted, but you can also put up buy orders that people can fulfill, which I really like. I'm just hoping that remains viable. It's really hard to know at this early stage how much of this early game stuff is going to translate into mid game and ultimately end game. But we shall see. So should you buy it at this stage? Well, it's a beta, and there is going to be a wipe. So it's hard to recommend anyone investing time and effort into something where their characters are going to be wiped, when you can watch people on Twitch, you can watch YouTube videos about the thing before you buy it. So I would definitely wait for the live game. I mean, I've got the beta because I've got a YouTube channel and I cover MMO, so it's in my interest and in the interest of my viewers that I talk about it, so I can justify it in my head for that reason, but I can't really recommend it at this stage because of that wipe. I think this is basically a soft launch anyway. I don't know why they don't let the characters just persist now, because it's not a beta, it's a stress test, you know. Essentially, they're not going to change anything huge between now and launch. But you know, they want a fresh start. They want a fresh start in a month's time. So I think it's the end of August that it's coming out. So not long to wait, and worth jumping in. I don't think there's going to be a monthly fee, from my understanding. There's a little bit of controversy to do with the cash shop so far. There's some time saving things, and the problem with time saving things that are bought for cash is that the game is artificially throttled in order to make you buy those things. I hope they don't do that. The cash shop so far is not too egregious. I seem to be making steady progress in my levels without having to buy anything, so I don't have any complaints in that respect. And since it's not a subscription model, they do need to make money somehow for a continuing service, so they just got to tread the line carefully, I feel like, and we as commentators and players need to keep them honest in that respect and not have it become a horrible sort of just an engine for driving sales in the cash shop, because that's not a game. That's when games really suffer, because it all becomes about just incentivizing people to buy things. And a game should primarily be fun, that you want to buy things for your favorite game, that is your hobby. You should want to do it, not feel compelled to do it, or somehow you're missing out if you don't do it. Just a nice option for people. That's the ideal, I guess. All right, so we will see. I will keep you updated, and maybe do some videos, maybe do some actual gameplay, and talk as I play. I've got to find the saltpeter, so the gunpowder. So I'm going to go and do that. Thank you for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please do so. But there's loads of stuff about Star Wars Galaxies and Skyrim on my channel primarily. But I do try to be more variety and do a variety of games. So this is one of those, and I'm thinking of trying some other MMOs and just enjoying games. So if you feel like being with me on my playing games journey, then sub up, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching, guys. Bye.